So just to recap, Merrick Garland appointed a U.S. attorney who was appointed by Donald Trump. Incidentally, there are other U.S. attorneys who were not appointed by Joe Biden and also not appointed by Donald Trump that can be a special prosecutor. Well, Robert Hur was chosen, and then Merrick Garland let him put out a garbage of a report, which my understanding is Garland had the same opportunity that Bill Barr did with the Mueller investigation, which is to completely twist the report around in a horrible way. He could have very easily, it seems to me, made sure that the report was actually consistent with the investigation. And again, I don't need to be told that Joe Biden is old. I get that. And I think you can just look at, videos of him giving a speech, today versus, 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. But that doesn't mean that the special prosecutor has a license to essentially lie for a news cycle. Here he is being questioned, and the Republicans, it's funny because the Republicans brought him in with the hopes that they could elongate this story as opposed to kill this story. And I think to a certain extent, the State of the Union address also really hurt them. I think they scheduled this in such a way that they thought coming off the State of the Union, he was going to fall asleep in the middle of the State of the Union, and therefore will be able to come in with a 1-2 punch. Hur quit his job at the DOJ 2 days ago so that he was allowed to testify completely unbound by any of the Department of Justice rules, regulations, or ethics. And here he is being questioned by Representative Madeline Dean, a Democrat from Pennsylvania.
You have a copy of your report today, don't you, in front of you?
I do.
Could you read a portion of it for me? Your words, it is page 11, starting on line 3, beginning with the words, "Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden." Would you read the next few sentences?
Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would present serious aggravating facts.
Keep going.
Congresswoman, I'm happy to have you read the words in my report.
Well, it's your report, so I think it actually is more fitting that you read those.
Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite.
Keep going.
According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it.
You may stop there. Thank you. You mentioned the indictment against Mr. Trump for mishandling sensitive classified national security information. That indictment says at the end of his presidency, Mr. Trump, I'm looking for my indictment here. I have it here. Hang on. Mr. Trump himself ordered that boxes containing classified materials go to Mar-a-Lago, where he hosted tens of thousands of guests. Then he kept these sensitive materials carelessly about the property, as you can see here. Classified documents ended up in a bathroom, a ballroom, on a floor, spewing about. And when a grand jury subpoenaed the documents, what did Donald Trump do? The indictment again shows against him what he responded by, suggesting that his attorney falsely represent that the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the subpoena. He directed his employee, Waltine Nauta, to move boxes of the documents to conceal them from Mr. Trump's attorney.
Now, Hur really didn't want to read that portion of his report because it essentially makes everything quite clear as to what's been going on. And what's interesting, too, that happened yesterday, I guess it was, there's a guy named Brian Butler who was mentioned in that initial indictment, the one that she's reading from, as Trump employee number 5 in that indictment. And he is the one who helped that Walt Nauta load about 10 to 15 boxes into Trump's plane at the West Palm Beach airport in 2022. Yeah, we're going to watch him talk about it. But apparently the reason why he came out with this, why Butler is coming out with this information, is because a couple of weeks ago, Judge Cannon, who is overseeing this, Trump appointed lawyer, well, might as well be, judge, is going to release the names of the witnesses. And so he figured, well, if I'm going to be exposed anyways, I might as well come out and tell my story. And this, incidentally, this guy, Brian Butler, was a 20-year employee of Donald Trump. Not somebody who was like out to get Donald Trump, unless maybe he had been working for him for 20 years and realized like, oh, what a crap. Anyways, here is Brian Butler.
To listen to is a moment that we spoke about where Brian Butler told us about how he was on this day in June 2022, not knowing what exactly he was doing, but he was asked to help load boxes, banker boxes, onto Trump's plane at his airport in Palm Beach, Florida, as the former president was set to go to New Jersey. Now, what he did not realize at the time that was happening then was Trump's team, his legal team, was meeting with members of the FBI at Mar-a-Lago after they had just performed a search of that storage room looking for classified documents, which we now know, based on the indictment, of course, that Evan Corcoran, Trump's attorney who was looking through those documents, Walt Nauta and others had moved many boxes out of that room. Now, Brian Butler, who is known and
pause it for 1 second. Like, what they're describing, do you know the Benny Hill show? Yeah, exactly. Like, they're walking into a room and it's literally like they're running out the other room, running with the boxes and putting it on an airplane. Like, you hear this story, you think like, oh, well, maybe, okay, they moved it around, they didn't know where it was, and they're claiming that they gave it, and they're literally like, this is like a getaway situation. Go ahead.
Many boxes out of that room. Now, Brian Butler, who is known and referenced 6 times as Trump employee number 5 in the superseding indictment, was asked to help Walt Nauta, who is Trump's body man turned co-defendant, load those documents onto the plane. Here's what he told us about that moment.
And then what happened is Walt left before me, and he never goes directly to the plane. He's either in the motorcade when he goes there with the boss, which the former president. And I remember telling him he left the club with, I didn't know what he had in his vehicle, but he waited for me at a nearby business, and I told him I would tell him when I was leaving Mar-a-Lago. So I left Mar-a-Lago, I texted him, hey, I'm on my way. He followed me, he pulled out and got behind me, we got to the airport. I ended up loading all the luggage I had, and he had a bunch of boxes. You noticed that he had boxes? Oh yeah, they were the boxes that were in the indictment, the white banker's boxes. That's what I remember loading. And did you have any idea at the time that there was potentially U.S. national security secrets in those boxes? No clue. No, I had no clue. I mean, we were just taking them out of the Escalade, piling them up. I remember they were all stacked on top of each other, and then we're lifting them up to the pilots. How many boxes was it? You know, they asked me in the interview, and I believe it was 10 to 15 is what I remember. I know it was the investigators. Correct. And when you look back on that now, what do you... Well, I had no clue until probably the end of June. There's a few different things that happened that kind of opened my eyes to, something's going on here. So you get that unusual request. Did you ever think to yourself, why were there so many boxes at Mar-a-Lago? For me, I'm just thinking, the former president, he has a lot of stuff he likes to lug around with him. I never would have thought it was anything like what we see now. Classified documents.
Yeah, I mean, what are the chances? Rough day for the Republicans, Biden crime family narrative. Right. Yeah. If only they actually cared about the lives of Palestinians, they'd have something to argue about.
Yeah, leaning in on that sort of thing when Trump, there's pictures of his crapper with documents boxes.
Yeah, it's amazing. They keep it's like, talk about stepping on the rake. And so they got a little bit upset. That their whole, like, for months, I feel like they have been like, this is going to be great. This is going to be our prime time. We've got the Biden crime family on this $5 million bribe, and then it turns out that their key witness is actually arrested for lying so extensively and so energetically. And then they think, oh, we got this guy saying that Biden's old. He can't. We don't have to bring up the fact that he basically said that what Biden did wasn't really prosecutable, and very different from what Trump did. We can ignore that part because we're going to spend the whole hearing about how old Biden is, and then it turns out like, the transcript, it doesn't look like he forgot when his son died, and you had number of occasions where got dates wrong and had to be corrected. And so they're pissed. And here's Representative Tom Tiffany, Republican from Wisconsin. And look, I'll tell you something. This is the way that it works. Like we saw this like with Benghazi. They went over and over and over again. There was never anybody who had their star witness for Benghazi on the Republican side and said, like, how dare you? Because it was going like they wanted it to go. They had 43, hearings on Benghazi or whatever it was. It was ultimately how they created the scandal about Hillary Clinton's emails being washed in acid or whatever it was.
Bleach bit.
And now they're pissed because their whole thing has fallen apart and they've got to look like, okay, how can we make this look like actually, what's our plan B? Oh, I know. This guy's from the Department of Justice, or was. Let's have at it. Here is Republican Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin.
Strong motivations to ignore the proper procedures for safeguarding classified information. And he provided raw material to his ghostwriter that would be of interest to prospective readers and buyers of his book. And I think he said something about, he viewed himself as a historic figure, correct?
I believe those words do all appear in the report.
Yeah, and he was also doing this for business purposes, that there may be people that would want to buy his book.
Towards the end of his vice presidency, Mr. Biden had resolved to write a book and began work on it towards the end of his vice presidency.
You know, I think, Mr. Chairman, this is really consistent with the Biden family when you look at them in trying to enrich.
The guys, like, they're going to now criminalize the idea that he wanted to write a book. This 70-some-odd man who had been in the Senate for 50 years, and I got to be honest, well, I don't know if I would read it. I mean, I didn't, but the idea that he wanted to write a book, are you kidding me? But here it is. It's consistent with the Biden crime family. They're
writing books.
They're writing books. Good.
To write a book and began work on it towards the end of his vice presidency.
You know, I think, Mr. Chairman, this is really consistent with the Biden family when you look at them in trying to enrich themselves. I mean, you're familiar with the work that the Oversight Committee has done over the last year, right?
I have read some reports of it.
I mean, 20 phone calls that were made to his son that he denied in 2019, 20 shell companies that were created, over $20 million. I mean, doesn't it appear there's a pattern here that where I come from, they almost call it money grubbing?
Congressman, what I'm here to testify about today is the work that I conducted in this investigation and in this report.
So I want to thank you for the work that you did as far as you could, but unfortunately, you are part of the Praetorian Guard that guards the swamp out here in Washington, D.C., protecting the elites.
That's a real thing.
And Joe Biden is part of that company of the elites. And you see it in the things that the Department of Justice has not acted on, Mr. Chairman. I mean, you look at the president's son, who does not have to answer for lying on his Form 4473 in regards to throwing away a weapon. You see it where the Department of Justice fends off the IRS when the whistleblowers come with this information. And now we see it once again where a president believes he is above the law, and there is no doubt that this president does believe he's above the law. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
You are a member of the Praetorian Guard.
Again, I just think like maybe leaning in on the president shouldn't be above the law, as you're saying, like Trump should be not liable for anything he did as executive. Like it's like the Swift boat thing. They think that cannot backfire.
It's fascinating, like how at cross currents they are from themselves. And I have to say that there is a quality. This guy's from Wisconsin. I don't want to lump everybody together from Wisconsin, but it's as if like they squeeze all the stupidity out of Ron Johnson, and it just drips all over the rest of the congressman from Wisconsin. You're not saying what I want you to say, so you're clearly part of the Praetorian Guard.
Yeah, come on, guys. Can't be sitting in...
Donald Trump appointed him.
The what? I didn't know about this Praetorian Guard.
Wait, nobody told me.
I thought the Praetorian Guard, I thought that was due to South Africa.
What is going on? Did I hire the Praetorian Guard?
Dang it.
Somebody should have told me about the Praetorian Guard. That's why we're going to fire everybody at the RNC. No Praetorian Guards there.
The least Praetorian Guard administration.
I also like the sort of mixed metaphors. The Praetorian Guard were the experts at maintaining swamplands. Yeah. Horticulturists.
You want a swamp drained, you call the Roman Praetorian Guard. They know all about it.
They were expert at carrying buckets of water and saturating the soil in such a way.
Experts in drainage.
The opposite. They're protecting the swamp. God. You don't get it.
Swamp
You don't
maintainers.
get it. Swamp maintainers.
It's like they're the EPA.
Horticulturists. Unbelievable. It's just nuts.